a todos. Estimados miembros del cuerpo diplomático de la Embajada de Irlanda en México, estimada Enright, autoridades de la UNAM y de la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, colegas, alumnos y amigos muy queridos que nos acompañan. Les doy la más cordial bienvenida a la ceremonia presencial de instalación de la Cátedra Extraordinaria Eavan Boland and Enrigth de Estudios Irlandeses de la UNAM. Los estudios irlandeses en la UNAM tuvieron como figura pionera a la doctora Aurora Piñeiro, aquí presente, quien desde la década de los 70 impartía el seminario sobre la obra de James Joyce en el posgrado en literatura comparada de nuestra institución. La maestra argentina Rodríguez, que llegará en unos minutitos, se hizo cargo, años después, de continuar con esta tarea dentro del programa de estudios de la licenciatura en letras inglesas, y han sido muchas las destacadas figuras de esta facultad que han contribuido a fortalecer y ampliar las labores de docencia, investigación, traducción y creación relacionadas con este campo de estudios. Menciono a manera de ejemplo al maestro Colin White, al maestro Federico Patán, al maestro Hernán Lara Zavala, a la maestra Eva Cruz y al escritor Salvador Elizondo, entre otros. A partir del año 2018, el doctor Mario Murgia, mi colega que está en aquel extremo del podio, y yo, Aurora Piñeiro, decidimos impulsar un proyecto que, de manera aún más intensiva, cristalizara los esfuerzos de nuestra comunidad académica en torno a este campo de estudios. Fue así como, con el indispensable apoyo de la Rectoría y de la Coordinación de Relaciones y Asuntos Internacionales de la UNAM, que hoy está representada por el doctor Trigo en esta mesa, se logró formalizar la creación de esta Cátedra de Estudios Irlandeses en el año 2021. Cátedra que a su vez fue alojada, o yo diría, para ser más enfática, amorosamente cobijada por la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras y por la Embajada de Irlanda en México. Instancias que han apoyado y promovido las diversas actividades que cada año llevamos a cabo. A esta iniciativa se unieron, en el mismo espíritu de generosidad, las herederas de la obra de Eavan Boland, así como la escritora Enright, que hoy nos acompaña, y quienes aceptaron fungir como las figuras emblemáticas de la cátedra. La cátedra tiene como objetivos fundamentales afianzar y promover el intercambio académico y cultural entre Irlanda y México. Las actividades hasta ahora realizadas se han caracterizado por estar abiertas a toda la comunidad universitaria, así como a todos los interesados en el estudio y difusión de las aportaciones de Irlanda en los ámbitos de la literatura y las artes. De igual manera, la cátedra ha buscado fortalecer un diálogo más amplio y de doble vía, donde las obras académicas y artísticas latinoamericanas también se han vuelto protagónicas. En este sentido, hemos trabajado en equipo con las otras cátedras de estudios irlandeses de América Latina, alojadas en la USP en Brasil, así como en la USAL, la Universidad de La Plata y la Universidad Nacional de La Pampa en Argentina. Este fructífero intercambio ha generado una nueva iniciativa que se encuentra en proceso de aprobación y que consiste en la creación de una alianza transnacional de cátedras de estudios irlandeses de América Latina, auspiciada no solo por las universidades referidas, sino también por las embajadas irlandesas de los países mencionados. Me llena de orgullo compartir este recorrido con ustedes, refrendar públicamente mi compromiso con este proyecto, expresar mi más sincero agradecimiento a todos los involucrados e invitarlos a participar en las muchas actividades que nos esperan y que serán anunciadas no solo por las vías que hemos utilizado hasta ahora, sino en la nueva página web de la cátedra, que muy pronto estará disponible en la plataforma digital de nuestra facultad y que ha recibido el apoyo también del Immigrant Support Program del Departamento de Asuntos Exteriores del Gobierno de Irlanda. Sin más preámbulos, cedo el micrófono a Ruth McKenna, segunda secretaria y cónsul de la Embajada de Irlanda en México, quien, a nombre de la excelentísima embajadora Maeve von Heynitz, dirigirá unas palabras. Muchas gracias.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Thanks. Hi everyone, good morning. So as Aurora said, my name is Ruth McKenna. I'm the consul at the Irish Embassy here in Mexico City. Unfortunately, our ambassador was called by President Chavez in Costa Rica to present her credentials, so she had to travel to Costa Rica at the last moment. So that's why I'm here today speaking on her behalf. So before I kind of share some remarks, I'd like to extend thanks first of all to Dr. Francisco José Trigo Tavera, el director de la Coordinación de Relaciones y Asuntos Internacionales, a la doctora Maeve Rodríguez Gort, directora de la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, a la doctora Nair, Anaya Ferreira, secretaria académica de la Facultad también de Filosofía y Letras. Y obviamente, I'm kind of switching back to English now, I don't know the titles in Spanish, sorry. I would also, of course, like to acknowledge the hard work and commitment of both Professor Aurora Piñeiro and Professor Murgia. You know, they have been really excellent partners for the Irish Embassy since my arrival, at least in Mexico City 2 years ago, and for the embassy before then. Thanks to their ambition and vision, their hard work and their love of Irish literature, you know, this fantastic project of the Irish Studies Chair has come together, so thank you. I think it's you know, important as well to, I know we're going to hear from her shortly, but to extend our warm welcome and thanks to Enright, who has travelled all the way from Ireland to be with us here today. It's a very long journey. The jet lag is quite difficult, so we really appreciate her presence here to officially inaugurate the chair. I think another thing just for us that, you know, we take great pride that the first Irish Studies Chair in Mexico is here in this very prestigious university. I was here yesterday with my colleague and a group of Irish artists. I mean, it's a really amazing campus. The library was designed by Juan Gorman, who is an architect of Irish descent. His father was an Irish immigrant to Mexico, so I think there's something really special happening here at UNAM. We have these artistic links, and I'm also the Irish Studies Chair is really going to contribute to the flourishing of academia around Irish literature, the study of Irish literature, and the promotion of Irish literature. So I think it goes without saying that storytelling is really at the heart of who Irish people are and how we connect with each other and how we connect with the world. 100 years ago, Ulysses was published, basically the defining literary monument of the 20th century and possibly the most influential Irish artwork or piece of literature ever produced. But really, not that much has changed since then. You know, we're very proud to see that Irish contemporary writing is flourishing. There are, you know, new voices coming out all of the time in Ireland, and it's really amazing to see how those Irish writers are resonating with international audiences. Not just last week, I was in Guadalajara with the ambassador and the entire embassy team. It was pretty hectic, but we brought Louise O'Neill and Michelle Gallen here to Mexico. We also had Colin McCann participating virtually, and it was really amazing to see in universities and colleges across the city of Guadalajara. They were constantly packed by students who had this hunger to learn more about Irish literature, and the stories that they're telling are really resonating with audiences here. I think it's just, you know, it's a real pleasure to see that deep appreciation, and I think, you know, here with you today, it's really fantastic to have Anne Enright with us. She's one of Ireland's most accomplished writers. Her novels, her short stories, and her non-fiction, you know, are nationally recognised, but also internationally recognised. And we're really privileged to have her, you know, be here with us and support the chair, and also lend her name to the chair. I would also just like to, I think Maria is going to say a little bit more shortly about Eavan Boland, but you know, she sadly passed away not so long ago, and she really is one of Ireland's best known and most loved poets. She's particularly important to the Irish Foreign Service. She she had a very close connection to the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs. Her father, Frederick Boland, was a distinguished Irish ambassador for many years. And I think just, kind of on that note, another thing to mention is that she wrote a poem to mark the centenary of the first, so in 2018 she wrote a poem to mark the granting of suffrage, or the granting of the right to vote to women in Ireland, and that was a poem that was actually read in the United Nations at a special ceremony. So I think it's just really interesting to see how Irish writers are contributing not only to cultural life but also to political life. There's a really very vibrant writing culture and appreciation of literature in Ireland, and it's something that we're so pleased to see shared between Mexico and Ireland. I think just the point on the United Nations is interesting to mention, and I'm not sure how many students in the room might be aware of this, but Ireland and Mexico are two countries. We're not also united by the appreciation of culture, but there's a lot of things that we stand for that brings us together. We have a really long and successful history of cooperating together in the multilateral forum. So in the United Nations Security Council, both Mexico and Ireland are serving as non-permanent members. There's a lot of jargon, but we're both serving there together, and we've been working together, co-chairing a forum on women, peace and security, which are issues that Eavan Boland speaks to in her poetry. And I just think it's really important to just kind of take a moment to think about how we're using literature to promote the shared values, and how literature can really act as a bridge between Mexico and Ireland, and also across Latin America. I know the chair has been very successful in collaborating with other chairs in the region. So that's really all I kind of wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed the event.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And now I'll give the floor to Dr. Trigo, Dr. Francisco José Trigo Tavera, quien es el director de la Coordinación de Relaciones y Asuntos Internacionales, la CAI de la UNAM.
Muy buenos días, tengan todas y todos ustedes. Un placer estar en esta facultad. Estimada Ruth McKenna, cónsul de la Embajada de Irlanda en México, estimada doctora María Rodríguez, directora de esta facultad, estimados miembros del Presidium y de la comunidad académica de esta facultad, es un gusto para mí estar presente hoy como coordinador de Relaciones y Asuntos Internacionales de nuestra universidad en la ceremonia presencial de instalación de la Cátedra Extraordinaria Eavan Boland and Enright de Estudios Irlandeses de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Siempre es motivo de orgullo que un nuevo espacio de enseñanza, aprendizaje, investigación y difusión, como lo han sido sin excepción las cátedras extraordinarias de esta casa de estudios, se sume a las labores críticas y analíticas que, desde hace ya décadas, llevan a cabo con excelencia, vigor y rigor esos valiosos instrumentos de intercambio académico e intelectual. Calificar de nueva a esta cátedra de estudios irlandeses es, sin embargo, un camino inexacto. Hace menos de 5 años, la doctora Aurora Piñeiro y el doctor Murgia, aquí presentes con nosotros, concibieron la posibilidad de un entorno universitario que pudiese estar dedicado al estudio y la difusión de la cultura y la literatura irlandesas. Desde ese momento, y gracias al entusiasta y generoso apoyo de la dirección y de la Secretaría Académica de esta facultad, así como al importante impulso y compromiso por parte de la Embajada de la República de Irlanda en México, un muy activo grupo de académicos, escritores y estudiantes se ha abocado a promover intercambios invaluables entre dos naciones con culturas monumentales, la irlandesa y la mexicana. Sin duda, una muestra patente de estos esfuerzos es la feliz y auspiciosa presencia de la misma Anne Enright, a quien tengo el placer de dar la bienvenida en nombre de la Coordinación de Relaciones Internacionales a esta facultad y a la UNAM. Esta primera visita de la ganadora del premio Booker a nuestra universidad representa una oportunidad extraordinaria para adentrarnos en la obra y en el pensamiento de una de las escritoras más relevantes y singulares de Irlanda de nuestros días. Convivir con ella significa también contar con el testimonio vivo de una tradición literaria tan antigua como vibrante, tan influyente como plural y polifónica. Hace apenas un momento dije que Enright había ganado el Booker, uno de los premios literarios más prestigiados en el mundo de habla inglesa. En efecto, ese galardón se le otorgó en el 2007 por su conmovedora e impactante novela El Encuentro, como se ha traducido su título al español. Allí en ese texto, una de las voces principales afirma que está lista para que la conozcan. Haciendo eco de esa voz, puedo decir hoy, en esta universidad estamos listos para que Enright nos conozcan. Igualmente puedo afirmar que nosotros también estamos listos para conocerla, aún más de cerca e incluso mejor de lo que nos permite ya entrever su brillante obra, que incluye 7 novelas, numerosos cuentos y otros tantos escritos de muy variada naturaleza. Hago votos porque la cátedra que lleva su nombre, así como el nombre de la memorable poeta Eavan Boland, sigan siendo, como lo es ya hoy, el vínculo esencial de muchos más encuentros, conocimientos y aún reconocimientos entre México e Irlanda. Dear Anne Enright, your presence at this National University of Mexico is highly valued and appreciated. Many thanks for sharing your vast experience in the literary field with us, and most of all for taking the long trip from Dublin to Mexico City to spend some time here with us. Let's hope you enjoy your time in Mexico City and at this national university, and you become one of our academic members for so many years to come. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trigo. Y ahora voy a dar la palabra a la doctora Mary Frances Rodríguez Van Gort, directora de la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras.
Hola a todas y a todos, es para mí un honor dar a ustedes la más cordial bienvenida a esta ceremonia de instalación presencial de la Cátedra Eavan Boland and Enrigth de Estudios Irlandeses y contar con la participación de la muy distinguida novelista Anne Enright. Welcome to Mexico, Atunán, quien nos honra con su visita. Agradezco la presencia de la secretaria y cónsul, la señora Ruth Maquena, y del personal de la embajada que aquí nos acompaña. También la presencia del doctor Trigo, Francisco Trigo, coordinador de Relaciones y Asuntos Internacionales de la UNAM, a los doctores Aurora Piñeiro y Murgia, que nos acompañan, representantes de esta cátedra, así como a nuestra querida doctora Aurora Piñeiro, maestra y a la maestra Rodríguez, que nos acompañará en un momento, las cuales son decanas del Colegio de Letras Modernas, y pues muy bienvenidos al resto de los asistentes. La Facultad de Filosofía y Letras ha sido pionera en los estudios sobre la cultura y la literatura de Irlanda a lo largo de varias décadas, además de cursos y seminarios especializados sobre autores emblemáticos como Oscar Wilde y James Joyce. Un grupo de profesores preparó y tradujo dos importantes antologías: Una lengua injertada, poesía irlandesa del siglo XX, y Raíces en la tierra, Irlanda en su ensayo literario. Estas obras, estas traducciones, contribuyeron de forma notable a difundir la magnífica producción literaria de ese país y a dar a conocer un panorama amplio y a la vez profundo de sus complejas identidades en movimiento. Durante los últimos 4 años, la Embajada de Irlanda en México nos ha otorgado un apoyo invaluable en la organización de una variedad de actividades académicas que han contribuido a la formación de estudiantes y académicos del Colegio de Letras Modernas y del posgrado de Letras. De estas actividades, los congresos internacionales Joyce Without Borders, celebrado en 2019 de forma presencial, y Joyce in Latin America, celebrado en línea en 2021, anticipan ya las dinámicas que enriquecerán a nuestras comunidades en el futuro. Espero que la sinergia que impulsa la instalación de la cátedra el día de hoy se mantenga por mucho tiempo y les doy la más cordial bienvenida. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to doctora Nair Anaya Ferreira, nuestra secretaria académica y también colega del Colegio de Letras Modernas.
Hola, buenos días. Además de darle la bienvenida a nuestra distinguida mesa y a todos ustedes, quiero simplemente decir que me siento privilegiada de formar parte de este día tan especial. Como se mencionó ya en la facultad, la literatura irlandesa ha sido un elemento importantísimo dentro de nuestros planes de estudio y hemos tenido la suerte de contar con profesoras y profesores que se han especializado no solo en la obra de figuras como Swift, Wilde, Joyce, sino de otros autores más contemporáneos como Excma y Heynitz. Sin embargo, tener una cátedra extraordinaria de estudios irlandeses con el nombre de Eavan Boland y de Enright abre un horizonte completamente diferente que permite que nuestros estudiantes tengan perspectivas nuevas y desafiantes de la cultura contemporánea de Irlanda y a la vez que comprendan la importancia de una historia compleja y paradójica con tantos puntos de afinidad con nuestra propia historia. Como estudiantes y estudiosos mexicanos de literaturas y lenguas extranjeras, siempre corremos el peligro de aceptar acríticamente ciertos cánones literarios que muchas veces perpetúan imágenes limitadas y fijas de la historia y de las relaciones entre los países. Con su magnífica obra, Boland y Enright nos ayudan a cuestionar las tendencias hegemónicas. Nos impulsan a pensar sobre el peligro de escuchar y aceptar una sola historia, como dijo otro autor hace unas décadas. No solo abre nuestra mirada a paisajes diferentes, a historias enterradas, a perspectivas y conciencias dobles y múltiples que incluyen las de las mujeres y los subalternos, sino que también nos llevan a establecer vínculos entre diversos referentes que desplazan las nociones simplistas de centro y periferia y que nos incitan a pensar sobre los aspectos tóxicos de la historia, para parafrasear un verso de Boland. En una época en la que resurgen ciertas visiones fundamentalistas de la realidad, agradecemos que poetas como Boland, novelistas como Enright, nos dejen ver que la vida está llena de matices y sutilezas y que mediante la ironía es posible cuestionar la cerrazón de los prejuicios. Me congratulo de que hoy se lleve a cabo la instalación de la cátedra y le deseo una larga vida. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Nair. And now I give the floor to Dr. Murgia, quien es profesor en el Departamento de Letras Inglesas del SUAIE y corresponsable de la Cátedra de Estudios Irlandeses.
Buenos días, les agradezco por estar aquí y por supuesto me uno a los agradecimientos a quienes están hoy en la mesa. En un poema intitulado The Mother Tongue, o La lengua materna, la gran poeta irlandesa Eavan Boland habla de barreras y de las formas que ya pueden existir para superarlas. Dos de los vehículos para lograr eso, que al final constituyen uno solo, son la lengua y el pensamiento. La voz de Boland dice ahí: hablo con lengua bífida. Usaré hoy esa imagen para pasar con algo de gracia el caso del español al inglés, porque de los nacionales que estamos hoy aquí, a mí me toca hablar en esa. In June 2021, while the COVID pandemic was still raging, we held an online avatar of something called the Joys in Latin America International Conference. That was in preparation for the centennial of Ulysses this year. Amid those celebrations on the 10th of June, the Eavan Boland and Enright Irish Studies Chair was officially, if virtually, installed. With invaluable support from the authorities at UNAM, the School of Philosophy and Literature, and the Irish Embassy in Mexico, most of us who are here today on this panel could share back then, on screen, the joy of creating a new environment for the study and promotion of Irish culture and literature in Mexico and the Spanish-speaking world. I am overjoyed that we are all here in person to relive that experience truly together. Last year, we had the pleasure of hearing from Dublin. Was it Dublin? I can't remember. From Dublin, and Enright's illuminating words. We feel privileged to have her here today in the flesh. There was a tinge of sadness on that occasion, however. The other emblematic figure of the chair, Eavan Boland, had passed away almost exactly 1 year earlier. Miss Sarah Casey, a daughter and representative of the Eavan Boland estate, generously and very movingly shared with us her impressions of the creation of the chair. To honor Eavan Boland's immense legacy, I would like to quote Nestle by her, titled very suggestively, "Reading as Intimidation." Almost at the end of the essay, Boland claims the following: "When I was young, I thought of aesthetics as an abstract code. I learned later that it was a human one. I learned it belonged everywhere and to no one person, which means it can be a common possession. It is my personal belief that the very existence of the Eavan Boland and Enright Irish Studies Chair is proof that there is profound truth in Boland's insight on aesthetics and by extension on art and literature. After having read most of Anne Enright's novels, short stories, and quite a few interviews, I suspect she shares that vision too. So, without any further ado, it is my great pleasure to give you an honor.
Establish a chair in the name of Eavan Boland and to have my name joined with hers in this way. Eavan was a steady light, a wonderful and righteous poet who was utterly clear and always kind. My thanks to the Head of Foreign Affairs at UNAM, Dr. Trigo, for his warm welcome, to the Dean of the School of Philosophy and Literature, Dr. Mary Frances Rodríguez from Gort, to Academic Secretary Dr. Anaya, and to Ruth McKenna from the Embassy for representing the Ambassador so well here. My thanks especially to Aurora Piñeiro for her abundant energy, drive and vision in bringing all this to fruition with the help of her colleague, Dr. Murgia. The chair, I'm sure, I know, has been welcomed also by my colleagues in UCD as a strengthening of the international ties between University College Dublin and this remarkable place, which is UNAM. Ireland is, compared to Mexico, a tiny country, but we have much in common, and we understand each other in a way that I think is intuitive. Neither of us is an imperial power. We both have enjoyed the Catholic tradition. Both countries use and continue to use literary and artistic culture as a way to define the constantly emerging nation state. I'm incredibly fortunate to be part of this small, agile and urgent writing tradition. And I'm especially proud, and I'm sure Eavan Boland would agree here, in the recognition afforded in recent years to the work of female writers, which has resulted in a great flourishing of work by Irish women on the global stage. I look forward to discussing two of these women's work, Sally Rooney's and Eavan Bride's, at a seminar tomorrow. Reading a bit of Joyce, can't leave them out. Okay, actually quite a lot of Joyce. So, Aurora, you know you can't say no to Aurora Piñeiro, that must be, there should be a warning. But at the bottom of her email, she could say, this email comes from a person who will not be refused. And so charming was her invitation last year to the Zoom inauguration of the chair, that I wrote a special piece that was quite close to my heart. I feel so honoured. I want to produce some new work for you here now. I finished a novel last Wednesday, and it hasn't been read by anyone. And my husband, here and there, my agent, one person has read this whole novel. Right? So I thought I might give it a lash, see what you think. So brand new work for you here, as just a small mark of my gratitude to you all. So the book is called The Wren, and it's got 3 generations in it. The first generation is a poet, an Irish poet, Phil McDowell, who's dead and gone and left his family when his wife got sick. Very interested in men who leave when their wives get sick. I heard a writer once say, yes, we were married, but she got sick, and you know. I said, yeah. Happens. Anyway, so this is a small seed for the writer who doesn't do that stuff, who's doing his writing. So we don't see much of Phil. We do see his work, and his daughter Carmel, at the age of 50, sees a little interview of a man that she hasn't met in decades, and the interview is recorded and it's on the internet, and the internet has produced this. So the first piece is Carmel looking at her father online. The interview was recorded in America. It must have been 1978 or 1979, when Phil was teaching there. A television studio, cavernously dark. In the centre of it, a coffee table of glass and chrome, a pair of microphone stands crisscrossed. At either end of this gleaming crux, 2 men who looked older than they might have done talked to each other from tan leather swivel chairs. Carmel tapped the space bar and let them go. The men's voices were conversational and clear, but the words came from behind some faint scrim of sound, and she ramped the volume up to check what it might be. There was the white hiss of electronic decay, and beyond that again, the shadows of other voices, as though some older recording were breaking through. Or the tape had magnetized itself on the spool somehow, and the men's words were overlaid by their own future words from further down the road. This acoustic lead was one indicator of the era. The other was the way her father smoked throughout, leaning forward to dab the stub at a fat crystal ashtray. Phil's tie was not straight. His jacket was the usual disgrace. He twisted forward, jerked back, he hunched over the chair and pushed the tweed away to scratch a spot on his ribs. There he was, 8 long years after the whipped off sheet and the broken chair the day he left them. Dado. Phil spoke about bluebells, the difference of the American woods to the spongy bogs of Offaly, and how he missed the wren there. He missed the smallness of Irish birds, and the wren especially, who is the king of them all. He mentioned courting his wife, who had walked with him through bluebell woods when he was a young man. She was from Dublin and unfamiliar with the countryside, and that in a way was what his early poetry was for. It was his gift to her. A posy. No, what was the word? A nosegay. They lived together in Dublin for some time, he said, but she got sick, unfortunately, and the marriage did not survive. Carmel pressed pause, went back. Chinatli and the marriage, he looked sadly down, did not survive. Unfortunately, said Carmel. Speaking the word aloud into the room helped break some difficulty she had sitting at her own dining table, watching her dead father online. Maybe it was the accent. Carmel's mind had emptied out at the sound of it, or was loud with some blank she couldn't get around. So taken was she by the way he said ran for wren. She failed to understand a single word of what he'd said next. The ran, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was stuck in the firs. This was a song that Phil always liked, for the fact it was a little vicious. He used to sing it every year on St. Stephen's Day, which was the slow day after Christmas. And Carmel was back in their house in Dunleary, watching her father stage his annual kitchen-shaking riot. Phil left the house by the front door and came in at the back with coal dust on his face and their mother's shopping bag on his head, the wicker handles hooked over his ears. He banged pots through sheets of newspaper, climbed up on a chair and swung the sweeping brush around the ceiling light, which clanged and swung, up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the ram. At the age of 5 or 6, Carmel had cheered and shrieked as she was supposed to do. She did not know that they had killed the little wren in the song, or the droline, as her father called the bird in Irish. Droolin, droolin, where's your nest? 'Tis in the bush that I love best. There was something lewd about that line, about the bush, which he thought about it now. One time, the stick he was waving had a dead mouse tied to the end of it by the tail. Was that possible? That he bopped them each on the head with a dead mouse? Carmel used to think she had imagined such things. When people told her she had no imagination, she thought, yes, I do. I imagined all of that. On the computer screen, her father looked oddly young and also worn out. The recording was made 2 years before he died, though he never knew he was sick. The autopsy would discover cancer of the esophagus, but up to the last it was just a lifestyle. Phil had a drinker's stomach, a smoker's cough. He was killed by an early and catastrophic bleed to the lung. And when he went, Carmel thought, a room in her head filled with earth. She paused the thing and lifted her head. There was a ticking somewhere in the room, which was gone as soon as she tried to hear it. Perhaps it had been on the tape. She checked her phone. Nell, her daughter, was coming home later in the week. She promised to call and tell her which day. It was hard not to want the sound of her daughter's voice now, though sometimes it was weirdly difficult to identify, especially when Nell was a girl. Mum? Yes? A child's voice lacked that recognizable something, grain or texture that made it fully human. Yes? Are you all right? Sometimes it was like talking to a doll. Did you find the address? What did the teacher say? Are you coming home? Nell said yes, or Nell said no. When the two of them spoke in this way, Carmen did not know what they just shared, apart from the fact that they were apart. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mum. Where are you? Are you coming home? Now she watched the televised black slit of her father's mouth as language slipped out of it on curls of exhaled lumpy stripe. Phil's hands shaped the air in front of his rotting chest as he talked of the little Irish wren. And there was just a whisper of alcohol in there, softening his tongue and wetting those mischievous, fond eyes. It was so easy to hate this man. The facts spoke for themselves. It was still hard to dislike him. And it was devastatingly easy to love him, to flock around and keen when he died, because all the words died with him. On screen, the Irish poet Phil McDarragh was talking about the work of Robert Frost, whose voice had called him to the forests of New England in order to record the fallen leaves. And he missed awfully. He missed the little Irish wren. He spoke about Bluebell Woods, his wife, her illness. She got sick, he looked down, unfortunately, and the marriage did not survive. He glanced up with wet eyes. Why was that? He was looking for sympathy. Our sympathy. Carmel's sympathy. Everyone's sympathy. Poor Phil. The interviewer viewed him with angled seriousness and recrossed his legs. This man wore droopy, heavy-rimmed glasses that made him look intellectual yet modern, bookish, but also a bit of a player. And Whitman, he asked, Ah, Whitman, said Phil, catching his tone. No. Whitman was the opposite of Irish. He was all the things an Irishman could never hope to be. Carmel had forgotten Phil's rueful jokes, the way he could mock the world with his fake sorrow. He was so disarming, slightly creepy. But she could barely form that thought before it was gone again, it was as if Carmel could remember the burr of his voice inside his... It was as if Carmel could remember the burr of his voice inside her body, humming along the bone. Listening to him now at a distance of more than 40 years, his daughter felt again, as though she held them in either hand, the two weighed syllables he gave to her for a name, Carmel. He said it as though she was the centre of the sweet, she was the salt honey dripped across her ice cream. This is the poem. The wren, for Carmel. Berry, glance, leaf, twisting into bird, high-tailed from hedge to hand, she was mine. The wren poked out from the cup of my fist and was still. Her eye, honour bright, to my vast eye, the whir of her pulse ecstatic. The wren was a panic of feathered air in my opening hand, so fierce and light I did not feel the push of her sent away from me. In a blur of love, to love indistinguishable, my palm pin-pricked, my earthbound heart of her love's weight relieved. And oh, my life, my daughter, the faraway sky is cold and very blue. Finished reciting, Phil dropped his head. The man with the droopy glasses blinked slowly and kept his eyes closed. Then he stirred and asked if Phil was working on an American cycle of poems. Oh no, said Phil. He tried to write about other places, he really had. But really, he only ever wrote about Ireland. I never left, he said. Carmel slapped the space bar and looked at him. She tapped again to let her dead father slip back into speech. You can't leave a place like that, Phil said. It's always with you. She froze him there, let out a bit of a laugh, and heard herself do it, a snort of air coming out of her face. She should go out into the garden, she thought, but the air was full of noises. You have a great understanding of women, the interviewer said, apropos of nothing. I think I do, said Phil. Their sorrows. Yes. What goes on in their minds. Well, there's nothing so necessary as the female heart. A lot of writers, a lot of people get that a little bit wrong. Okay, so that's Carmel and her dad. And here is the daughter, Nell, who's out exploring ideas about love. Some of the language here is young. She's young. So she finds her friend Mal, who's gay, in Utrecht. She's had a bad relationship with a nasty man. Go figure. Okay. I find Mal in Utrecht doing a master's and smoking too much weed. He lives overlooking a canal, or maybe it's a river. He has a bicycle, though you can also walk anywhere here. So we walk. Dutch people leave their curtains open and you can see into their living rooms as you pass on the street. And in the centre of Utrecht, these rooms are perfect. Every window frames a still life. Mal says Dutch children go wherever they want so long as they're home for dinner. Also, one night we drink late and the barman won't serve Mal's friend Jamal because he is not white. It happened. First night we rolled up and settled into Mal's 4th floor apartment, which is one huge room with rafters running up to a point like an upturned boat. Mal says it's cheap because of the noise from the cafes along the water. But I sneak around online and I think it really isn't cheap. And that Mal has been totally funded by his property speculating father. The wall over his desk is pinned with pictures of those futuristic buildings with hanging gardens and trees on balconies. And I ask him, how come they never get built? Well, yeah, he says, it's just trees. Not exactly high tech. Say that in a Dutch accent, he says. I'd really enjoy them. When I saw him at the train station, we hugged. And I remembered how he was so skinny and long. He has a fresh ink of a bee above his thumb and an open safety pin tattooed on his forearm. Also, he pulled down his collar so I could see the letter A in cursive on the base of his neck. Who's A? I said. Annie. This is a guy who puts his little sister's initial above his collarbone. He's the sweetest person, and I love him like he never faded out on me, not at all, and erased all our good times. How's Lily? Who are you working for now? Still freelancing, I say. Great. For some reason, I feel disbelieved. Later, I tell him I broke up with someone. Hard to say if we were even a thing, I say, but anyway, it's done, and I don't know. It was a bit maybe coercive. Mal looks away from me and says, "Oh, you. We are smoking some mild, sweet-natured kush, which he passes over." He was just very indifferent, I say, and kind of mean. "I can't die," says Mal. "Yeah, well, the sounds of cafes and bars below. There are people in kayaks on the water, even though it's dark, and everyone out there is having a fun time. I was in love," I said defensively, and he takes another drink. I really was. We talk about people from home. Mal doesn't see anyone much. He rarely checks his phone. He's a funny boy, Mal. He takes what's in front of him and leaves the rest behind. I tell him Lily is in a relationship with an older woman in London, and I think she's a bit of a bully. Shona went into IT and fell in love with a guy in IT, which seems impossible when you say it all in one go. But she's really keen, diving with a dress, scouting island venues, quote unquote, for the big day. Romance is clearly something she feels she can afford. Or am I just jealous because I can't afford it, that's for sure. "The thing you don't understand," he says. "Me? Okay, women. The thing women don't understand is that love and sex are opposite things." "Oh, shut up. True. You ever had a crush?" I say. "Oh, like you would not believe. Well then, I'm just saying that love is a higher function, and I'm all for that. Yes, please. May we all get there someday. Meanwhile, sex is a beast." This makes me laugh, even though I don't want to laugh. There's some extra hit in this stuff, and I can't stop the giggles. They well up, burst out of my face in slow motion. In a slow motion peristaltic wave, over and over. I'm a broken-hearted woman trapped in a body that finds everything hilarious. It feels a bit like vomiting. The fuck is this stuff? Mal says, "Good evening, Utrecht." An unspecified amount of time later, I remember what I want to say. "No, it's not." But Mal is still together, or at least together enough to insist. "Love requires," he pauses, looking up for the right term, "2 acts of submission. And sex," he pauses again, "really doesn't." On Saturday evening, Mal goes up to the big city and he comes back in the door secretly pleased, like he's just killed someone and got away with it. Sunday is all come down. He wakes late, eats 3 pot noodles in a row, then lies down for a long existential wrangle on the sofa. Mal is studying urban spaces. He'll end up working for some developer, getting his ugly pile of bricks past the planning authorities. What can you do? People have to live someplace. You might as well plant them a few fucking trees. Right. You think you can walk away, but you can't, because there isn't anywhere else to go. Right. So yeah, I think you might as well plant them a few fucking trees. I'm sitting on a slim, trendy, egg-type chair, a long scoop of orange leather on a swivel podium, an object beyond the dreams of any Irish landlord. And I see a future for Mal, because it's a bit like his past, but I do not see a future for me. Mal tells me a story he read somewhere about a planet where everyone is the same gender. Let's call it Maeve. So they're all equal, and they're all happy, until one of them starts to like another one a little more than the rest. He wants this particular guy's company. He wants his special attention. He starts to miss being with him. It's possible he's even shahara attracted. And this feeling spreads to his system like a blush. And it's more than a blush, it's a kind of metabolic shift. His body starts to change, and this is just mortifying because everyone can see it happening, especially the person they're crushing on, who's just embarrassed to see the effect he's having on this guy, now subject who is now also subject to public ridicule. After a few weeks, the one with the crush is fully transitioned to a different gender. Let's call it female. And some male shags them. Maybe not even the male they wanted in the first place. And they get pregnant, and that is how the species propagates. So the trick on this planet is not to fall in love. Not ever. Because if that happens, you are literally fucked. I said, you are the pussy. No, I get it, thank you, I do get it. And you might like being the pussy, because that can also be nice. Back in college, Mal used to say the golden rule is never shag someone who has more problems than you. But he spent 6 months with a guy who was so fucked up he couldn't be near it for too long. This guy, Paul, was lit up by damage, super skinny, lip chewing the lot. And anytime you saw them together, they bickered and bitched like something out of the 1990s. What about Paul? Is that love? Oh, Christ, no. I don't know. I couldn't fix all that. I couldn't. What? That was really hard. Now Mal is going to bondage clubs at the weekend. And I say, that is so exciting. Can I come? I'd love to see some, whatever, piss play. But I also don't mean it, and I worry about it. I worry he might get hurt by being hurt. I worry I cannot help it, that it would make him less of a person in the long run. It's not like that, he says. Why not? Just, you go in the door, and it is what it is, and then you leave. In the morning, Mal goes to class and I walk the streets taking photos. I buy a ticket for the Cathedral Tower, which is, they say, the tallest in the Netherlands. And then I have a panic attack inside this tower, entombed in its stone walls, 100 metres above the sane and lovely city of Utrecht. There are 465 steps, and it happens at step number 440, or thereabouts. My journey upwards starts fine. A beautiful tower room with a door in the corner to a narrow stairway, which turns at right angles on stone steps to a high space, soaring windows on either side, and in the middle, a massive wooden frame holding the bells. People duck onto the beams to stand inside a metal cloche, to touch a clapper as long as a man. I do this too, to know their weight and balance, to feel the hum inside the metal walls. I dig with a knuckle, think of sound as a force that might knock you down. The next level up, there's many cogs and gears, a rotating brass drum, like the giant contents of a music box. Another frame of bells operated by a keyboard hooked up to cords and pulleys. This steampunk monster is, a sign tells me, to carry on. Finally then, the spiral staircase to the roof, which appears to be inside the wall, a single file twist around a slender pole of stone, with not enough room to pass if you were to meet someone coming down. There's barely enough space to put both feet on the narrowing slice of each step. A really fat person might get wedged in here, I think, and then I feel very increasingly fat. I turn and turn around the central axis, and I don't feel I'm climbing higher, so much as winding tighter, wringing myself out. I cannot breathe. The couple behind me is Polish, perhaps, and behind them are voices that sound American. I fill the staircase to bursting. I am an international impediment. Poles turn back to say, "Moment, please," and below them an American voice says, "Mom." Below me the stairway clogs up and clogs up some more. I'm really working my lungs now. I think I might be able to stagger up sideways with my back against the wall, but I worry I'll hit my head on the roof, even though I know the roof will rise with me as I go, because the roof is just the underside of the ascending steps on the next twist round. My body does not understand this. My body thinks the roof is getting lower. My body wants to crawl, and after a small time, I allow it to sink down, reach out with my hands, use my left leg, like a demented half crab, one step after another, up out into the opening. I stand in a wire cage, stretched between decorative Gothic stone. You can see the city below, and the flatness of the countryside in every direction. The American family looks out on the Netherlands. The Polish couple look out. The wire cage empties and fills again, empties and fills, while I focus on the rational Dutch horizon line. His view has been available since 1382. On a fine day, you can see both Amsterdam and Rotterdam. I think of the far skylines slowly scribbled in with new buildings over the centuries. The breeze is nice. The third or fourth time the place empties out, I empty out too, following a neat, probably Korean, middle-aged foursome. The wall is under my right hand this time, and this feels better to me, but I can still only use one foot repeatedly. As I go down, I say the word carry on over to myself over and over again. Carry on, carry on, carry on. At the bottom of this awful screw, the carillon is more antique and lovely than before. I'm walking through a musical instrument inside it. Another level down, the big bells are splendid again. I stand looking up at the frame on which they depend, my heart in a flurry of exaltation. I think that maybe I should stop smoking Mal's fearsome Dutch weed. I don't know if I suffer from claustrophobia or vertigo, a fear of towers, a fear of spiral staircases. Why is all anxiety always described as a spiral? I have body dysmorphia, I have panic, I have issues. But I also think that beauty is to blame, because without beauty, there would be no fear. How do I phrase this? The machine of the tower has tipped me into another place. The fear I have is the fear of angels. It is not terror, but awe. I wait until there is no one on the narrow last staircase which I negotiate on my bum, not because I'm afraid of falling or of the people behind me, but because I couldn't get down anymore. I have discovered the angelic. I reach the big room. I go down the broad stairs and saunter out of there, breathing light and air. Back in Mal's flat, I say, I love you, but I have to go. And when he looks up from his desk, I think Mal is a bit of an angel too. Not yet, he says. Soon. I look up fear of angels. Is it a phobia? And I land in Christian internet. This is a scary place. Rachel tells me that the first words out of every angel's mouth are, do not be afraid. Every angel that ever appeared, fear not, fear not. From the train side, Mal and I continue our conversation about love. I know what I want to say to him now. Love is not a higher function. It is the first function. It is the first thing we know. It sends me a meme, a quote from some Japanese writer set against a pretty sunset for some reason. It says, the masochist is always in control. Thank you.
After such a reading, well, this is a moment when we have a chance to ask questions, to make comments to Mrs. Enright. So please do.
I hope I didn't go on too long. Okay, give it a good shake.
Okay, please.
Yes.
Well, first I want to say that I loved it. But my question would be like, hearing you, I thought, when do you feel completely satisfied with each of your works? Like, when do you know that's like the final thing that you want to do to your work?
A little bit later. Always not yet. So I mean, that's super fresh, that work. So I haven't said it aloud in a room before, and it's wonderful because I can see little trips and tramps that I can make things usually shorter. I can make it a little more fluid. There can be, when you write over an expanse, like a real feeling of completion or a real feeling of shift. But sentence by sentence, you're never finished.
Anyone else?
Yes,
Oh, yes, I'd like to ask a small question. Have you ever had to deal with writer's block during the process of doing all of these texts?
yeah, block. What's the block? No, I don't do block. It's a word, you know. It's like insomnia. If you think you have insomnia, you then will have insomnia. You imagine insomnia. You imagine block. So I have techniques. I move from one project to a different kind of project. I only ever do one novel at a time, but I will do some non-fiction going at the same time. But so I dodge. Those feelings of impossibility are worth excavating. They're worth thinking about. And people have different models in their head for being stopped or for not knowing how to continue. They work passively, and they work in a passive and aggressive or a positive or negative thing. Sometimes you don't know what's next. Sometimes something is stopping you, a feeling of inadequacy or being judged. There are many different mechanisms, and they're all individual. I don't do any of them. Sorry for laughing. Put on some headphones, get some music going, and then you don't notice your block. Please, sorry. Hi.
I'm wondering, have you ever been in Mexico City before?
Yes, but everything with me is before children or after children. After children is it's a very intriguing chronology. I don't know what the years were after children, but I think maybe in 1998, in the FA as it was then. And in Oaxaca, I was in San Cristobal de las Casas, and a little place down on the border called Ferreira, which we ran out.
So I'm wondering if there's something specific that you're looking forward to see or if anything, I mean, so far your visit is familiar. The connections that exist between Ireland and Mexico, I think that there's like a lot culturally as well that we share. Yeah, I'm wondering if you foresee any of that, right? So there's that.
Yeah, well, no, I've been so obsessed with writing this book that I haven't identified my key moments that I want to. I don't know whether I should either. Identify something before it happens. The book is full of birds, so I'm quite interested in the culture of the quite ancient bird culture here. I am very much looking forward to going back to the Trigo Museum, which was 25 years ago. It's full of women in long skirts. Yeah, I have a skirt. I brought a skirt with flowers on it, and I will wear my skirt to the Trigo Museum.
Decorated right now.
And it's decorated. Yeah. So. Yes.
And I think Halloween will get more consistent. I'm thinking that it's a very magical scene, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think of a lot of Irish writers' stories that remind me of that sort of ethereal sort of feeling of magic that is around. So I don't know.
I'm a writer. I'm really careful with metaphor. Okay. I'm really careful with metaphor. So I'm hoping to be ambushed by metaphor.
I'm sure you will. So yeah, perhaps come back and tell me
Yes.
what.
Yes. I'll take a picture of my skirt.
That's the most.
She's a real heroine. I'm pretty proud of her. Yes. Thank you.
Hey, in your reading, you're showing your slides that you're very concerned with the Irish people being outside of Ireland.
Yes.
The Outback
Yes.
Well, there's a lot to say about Irish exiles from the very beginnings of the last century and even centuries earlier. So I was just wondering, and you're reading the talk of this movie in the gallery, there's also this movie. So I was just wondering, how would you describe the idea of being an Irish, being outside Ireland these days?
In the Green Road, the children in the Green Road went away and came back. And Nell is also going away and coming back to her mother in both cases. So there's a very, in the Green Road, very real alignment of the country and the mother as the motherland. Ireland is being a female character, who in some cases eats her young. As Joyce said, Ireland is the old pig that eats her farrow. But I mean, to me, we're always leaving, and I just make that a little more clear. Yeah. I don't know about this one.
And again, thank you very much for being so generous with us, because this is the second time you share a special text and a special reading with us. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you. And this does not mean that I'm closing the session. Don't worry. So, Alex, and then I saw hands there. Okay, please.
Yes, thank you again for being here. In several of your novels, like Gathering or The Word Walls, Actress, memory plays a very important
Yes.
for the characters. And now after listening to the first part of what Carlo was looking at this video, right? And then video for father, 2 years for childhood. So I was just wondering, tell us about how important memory is for the characters to develop or to invent themselves.
Well, because chronology isn't always direct, isn't always linear in my work, because I don't think that's how we live. I think we're often ambushed, or we invite our past and also the future. We very rarely live in the present. We're always thinking ahead or behind, and actually living in the present is a real challenge in many ways. So I don't know about this one. I mean, in the Gathering was a real investigation of memory and where imagination and memory collide, and memory turns into history, which is gradual reification, gradual becoming more real, okay? Of the past, of turning the past into some kind of object that you can handle and say is finished. So that kind of thing of making the past finished was very much part of the Gathering. And then you could see the past and it stops shifting. So Carmen looking at the table of her father is absolutely central to me. In fact, it's kind of more of a modernist moment. It's almost a thinking of Pratt's last tape. That kind of magnetizing of the school and all that kind of thing, that the father has been turned into this very mysterious and very empty image, that she finds quite difficult to break into. So that's not quite her past either. Arnold is a very different character too. She has no imagination. She has no imagination. So that's partly psychological. She's very literate minded. She was abandoned by a poet who's got nothing but imagination. So I don't know what this book is yet. I haven't talked about it yet. But her past isn't, she doesn't privilege the past, she just gets on with things.
I promise I'll give you the floor in a couple of seconds. And I was just listening to you, and you just said that the Gathering was an investigation of memory. How about Actress in that sense?
Oh, it's like an exam.
You don't remember that book?
Yes, I remember that book. Is that an investigation of memory when she sits there? And I suppose it is, but she's trying to capture something, which is her mother in the past, and she doesn't really, and it's quite a glamorous woman. So it has that kind of the charisma and the bang and nostalgia, whatever it is. So she's trying to, I suppose, make that image live in some way, or to possess that image in some way. So yes, it is difficult to possess the past for her. But it's not, I don't know if that book is really about the past. Is it? Maybe it is.
Well, I would say so, but I'm not sure about whose past, either the mother or the daughter.
Well, the one person who read this book said that this next book, which is called Lorraine, said it's about generational trauma. So it's about things that are not remembered but are repeated. So they're not, we don't sit down and talk about them, but they enact themselves out in generation, particularly small books of violence. And so it's the unspoken trauma, or the undiscussed trauma.
Thank you. So please, those two hands, so please.
Well, just remembering what Isa had said about María, right around the writing, I felt that María today while we were reading, right? And yeah, I wasn't sure about what to, if I should raise my hand or not, because I have more of a comment on today's reading than questions for you. But while you were reading, how the first part has already developed, right? I felt it flew very well. It's very fluid. And I know it reminded me so much of this stream of consciousness, right? Going back to Joyce and all the pillars of Irish literature. So, I don't know, it was very magical how you went from something, from different ages, from different decades at least, the interview and then watching the interview on the computer, right, or on the internet, and then back to the countryside. That connection made between those parts is very organic, it's very natural.
Yeah, it's just technical though. You know, she's in a room. I was in that room writing that piece for very months and months and months. I stayed a long time in that room. And there are other parts of the description. She's in the room in the past, the dead past, or the internet past is right there. And in this book, a lot of my students I teach creative writing, they're worried about the internet and how do you put the internet into a novel. Someone said that Patricia Lockwood did that already, and I thought, well, more than one person can do that. You can't really own the internet, you know, artistically. And so how to write a young character without the internet is very difficult. But what the internet does is it smashes up our consciousness in this kind of delicious way. It makes things very accessible, and it makes time not about loss. It flattens a lot of stuff, and so that was fun to do. But it is also about loss. She's looking at her father on the internet. Who wants to do that? Hands up. Who wants to look at her father? I don't want to do that. I think my children will do it someday. I'm not sure I want them to do it either. You'd rather have the human being.
Yeah, and I think it resonates a lot with I thought about the pandemic just.
Yeah, that's right. In the pandemic, she's in a room. There's a screen.
Yeah, and I think it connects a lot with problematics and things we're in a lot of contact with today. What I was trying to get to is that I love how you found this connecting point between the internet and the memes, right? Everything is so electronic and contemporary. And the image of the countryside, and somehow the sublime, right? Beauty and fear. It
hierarchies, from the sublime to the abject, both spiritual and sexual, I suppose you could say. So it is very interesting in those vertical lines that people draw throughout. Whereas the internet is great horizontal influence throughout.
Yeah, and then it reminds me a lot of what we've been discussing about the connections, the cultural connections between Mexico and Ireland that seem to be so distant, right? But we have similarities like the Catholic Church and colonization. They reminded me of these memes we have of the angels, right, on the not here, or the discussion of table of why academics talking about why women think this way, right? For example, with the interview with the father. And I don't know, it was very interesting, I think, now that we are sort of getting away from the pandemic, seeing how these problematics are being discussed also through the internet, and the contrast between being, as you said, in a room in your computer, and then looking at open spaces and exploring, for example, matters of beauty, right, and standards. The change of perspective about what
Yeah, no, I just say, just to point out what you're saying a little, just one last thing, which is that the experience in the tower is an intensely physical, three-dimensional experience. So whatever experiences happen online, they are not that. They don't have that, that visceral is the wrong word, but they don't have that bodily kind of effect.
Yeah,
we give the floor to Emiliano, who is also interested. Thank you, dear. Tomorrow we will go on with it. Please, Emiliano.
Well, one thing that stood out from the was what he discussed was the girl's mind and all that, especially in relation to something. Because I really think that it's amazing that we could portray the way these characters appear in time and how these different stimuli are affecting her. And in that way, I think readers can also feel that way. Someone who has how do you usually approach writing these type of subjective characters and in your writing?
This is a great question because my problem is I can't write objectively. You know that I always do it in a third person voice. I get closer and closer to. And with Nell, her voice was a very natural pleasure. I just enjoyed writing her, and she says whatever Nell she wants to say. She's just really fantastic. You know, for me, she's fantastic. I really like her as a character. So Carmel is a very restricted kind of consciousness. Nell is very open and very free, and her voice goes anywhere. Whereas Carmel doesn't have so much of that voice, so much agency, and she's described from more of a distance, more neutral, in her, whatever the technical term is for that. But I sometimes I wish I could write a simply objective book because then these things are currently sort of privileged. Not always privileged, but they are currently privileged, so something is quite clear and authoritative. I claim that kind of authority. I'm kind of interested more in disruption than authority. Still, I still want the book to move. I don't want to give people a finished, clear thing. And of course that's what they want, but I'm not giving people what they want. There's loads of books. There's loads of books that do that. Very well. I don't read them so much either. Okay.
I wanted to say just three very quick things. The first one is that I like about, first, thank you. I think we all enjoyed a lot the reading. And I love how one character was trapped and the other was trapped too. So they were trapped, one by their being overwhelmed by life, kind of trapped them in their own experience.
experience and body, and the other was trying to get out the meaning, and that like the daughter looking at the video of her father and trying to get out that like a soul, and the other one being quite the opposite, like everything is so abundant that it traps her inside of herself. And I think that's very beautiful, and I think that we can all relate to some extent to that. So
that's very well identified. Thank you for that insight. But again, I'm writing a book that's an annoyance to me because it has no antagonist. The antagonist is dead, the antagonist is the tradition, the antagonist is how can you kill a dead thing? but the antagonist lives on in the book with these poems which are real and which should act as kind of points of life or light in the text. But similarly in Actress, what was damaging to Catherine O'Dell was not one man, but a whole system of fictions and relationships. So no single antagonist. So you can't really, it's not really Hollywood approach. And you can't kill. It's like, I don't know if you know Peerkind. He goes to a farm and he's trying to kill the farm. Little boy. It's a bit like Star Trek as well. From Ibsen and Strindberg. Ibsen.
And the second thing was a question. I think we as young people are very concerned of the why of things. I don't think they are as important as you move on, but I still want to ask. And it's how do you know when something is worth writing about? And once you know, how do you do it?
You find your arrogance. And you don't have to tell anyone about it. Okay? Just say hello to your arrogance. But also what you need to do is if you write something, you honor that gesture, whatever that gesture was. You honor the fact that there is something, there is actually an enormous amount contained in the texture and the problem of what you just put down on the page. And that can be expanded imaginatively if you say it's worth it. So honor the page. Forget what I said about arrogance. It's all about humility. It's all about being humble in the face of the work.
Thank you. Caro?
I want to practice this question with that at this time. I am obsessed with the body and obsessed with the representations of the body and particularly loving it. So I was thinking, in the gathering...
Can you give the seminar tomorrow about Ingrid McBride?
I was thinking in the gathering, this very powerful first paragraph, the ending of this paragraph is, I think you might call it a crime of the flesh, but the flesh is forced away, and I am not sure what word may linger in the bones, and the image of the bones lingers throughout the whole room. And if I think of Make Babies, which is a non-fiction metaphor of writing, the body is the protagonist of that direction. Not only in terms of what happens to once one is pregnant and the litter is a baby, but also the actions of the baby as the body that is just getting into knowing the sensorial world.
I mean, there are many a lot of new literature about what it is to reproduce and women thinking a lot about motherhood. But thinking is no use to you. I mean, it's some use to you. It makes you feel like you're thinking. Where, but if you're pushing out a baby, that thinking is not entirely what's happening in the room, But it can be useful, it can be nice. But the body will produce the baby without the mind being active in any way. So that's the bottom line. So,
and by saying that, I also think of the reading of this book and the description of the kind. And everybody as well.
Yeah, she can't breathe. Oh yeah, no, and she gets into other body ones. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
So I want to ask, what is your relation with what?
What is what?
Your relation?
Oh, I don't have one. No. You can't have a relationship with the body. That's a huge philosophical question. Cogito ergo sum. Let's go back to Descartes, okay? And start there with the separation of mind, of thought from somatic experience. And of course, somatic experience is hugely interesting and is now increasingly respectable as a kind of area of interest and concern, intellectual interest and concern. But it's like you can't get around without one yet. So I'm not even sure if it is a relationship. I'm very interested in somatic experience, and I'm quite interested in the way the body doesn't forget, though the mind can forget. Yes.
Okay, so on that note, and with that mayor's statement, I don't have a relationship with the body. Shall we call it today?
Yes. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.